Continuing my cancer journey. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and here then began the cycle of all appointments with the medical professionals that had to help in what was devastating news, earth-shattering news, and something that was very difficult for me to process, as there was no history of any breast cancer in our family or anyone that we directly were related to. And it was difficult to ask yourself, why is it that I am being this victim of a disease that just came out like a bolt out of the blue? The cycle of appointments involved seeing eminent surgeons, and I call them eminent because they are all doing a great job. They are all trying to save lives, and they are all trying to fight cancer, be it, in my case, breast cancer. I still recall seeing my surgeon, who had advised that the aggressive nature of my breast cancer would involve a mastectomy, which is the entire removal of the breast, and would also involve removing the lymph nodes, as tests had shown the cancer had spread. They informed me that my breast cancer then was grade 2, stage 3. So grade 2 because it had spread to more than the area of the breast, and stage 3 being its aggressive nature. A lobular cancer is what they informed I had, and that it was because it was estrogen linked. So the journey of the surgery was then put in place, and I was also informed that following surgery other professionals would be involved, as like the oncologist, who would have to deal with my treatment path for chemotherapy and also radiotherapy. I still recall seeing the surgeon and being in total disbelief and shock, as it was just something that I could not contemplate could ever happen to me. Having received this diagnosis and the treatment plan, life became quite an irony, in that the very month that I was being put for surgery was the time and month when our eldest daughter would be graduating as a doctor. And yet, just as she would graduate and practice as a doctor, was her mother now on a journey of having to deal with this devastating news and disease. I was also then left with the dilemma of, how do I deal with this? Do I keep it to myself? Do I keep it all secret and hope that, it was all a bad dream, and one day I would just wake up and it would all be gone? This was actually the line that my dear husband wanted to take, because it was too much for him to think that this could happen to me, his wife, and the mother of our children. However, I decided in my own way that what would work best for me was that I would share this news, and I would tell all my friends, my relatives, and it helped me to come to terms with the path that I was put on. And the most difficult part of sharing this news would be to break the news to our children. And I still recall very clearly that it was the end of the month of May, when, whilst tests were still ongoing, but the information was almost certain as to my diagnosis, that I felt it appropriate during half-term, with all the children at home, that I would need to break this news. More importantly, because my youngest then were 10 and 12. And I felt that the only way I could deal with this was to have them know that the path of life for their mother was perhaps not going to be as certain, as it of course isn't for all of us. But when you're hit with a diagnosis of this severity, it does seem to cut short the path that we all take for granted, that we are going to be on this planet for a very long time. And I do recall, when diagnosed by the professionals and coming home, I sat in the car and totally distraught and really having to share the news with our eldest children, and basically coming out with, how will I tell our youngest daughter? She was only 10 at the time and our son was 12. As it was, I found the strength. As I said, during half term we had the children together, and I remember giving them the news and seeing the reaction on their face was a complete blank and shock. Of course, it's difficult, not only for the person suffering, but those that are related, as to what is this. And they were, of course, only children. And, it's very difficult for a child to be told the seriousness of the illness that their parent may be going through and the journey that they would have to endure. Children feel helpless. They don't know how they can support you at this time. I have to say I was really blessed, and I still to this day am grateful, because each and every one of my children did nothing but support me like my strength and armour. My youngest, I still recall, she said, "Mum, you have to get rid of this. You have to get it removed." And you think a 10-year-old with that foresight is thinking, how is my mother going to be saved? She's going to be saved by this surgery. And rather than fear the surgery, the anaesthetic, the path that would then follow of radiotherapy, chemotherapy, I was then able to basically see it as a way that I would be able to survive, or hope to survive, during the time that all my children were at a difficult stage in their life of, the stages that children are, GCSE, A-levels, university, and when your children are at primary school, for them to think that, potentially they could be losing a parent is very hard indeed. So the journey continued, and I had my surgery, I had the lymph nodes removed, and I was told that because of the severity, all the lymph nodes had to be removed, so that then I would also have to have a permanent side effect of the breast cancer, and that was lymphedema in my right arm. This, greatly restricted my being able to use my right arm, right hand, because I am a right-hander. This was quite restrictive. But I would see that I'm alive, and that, I'm still with my family, my friends, and the pouring of support that I received is the reason perhaps why I was able to get through my first stage of the diagnosis of the breast cancer, for which I'm blessed and grateful to this day. As the treatments continued, the chemotherapy kicked in, and obviously you have the side effects, which were quite grueling. You lose your hair, you've already lost an important part of your body, the mastectomy has removed your breast, and you feel as if, some part of you has now, meant that you are no longer a complete person. However, I was fortunate in not being too concerned about my physical side of whether or not I had the both breasts, and whether or not I should have surgery to put back something artificially that I felt that it was decided I was no longer to have. I had a very supporting, and I still do, the reason again why I am still as far as I am with my journey is because of the rock of a husband that I have been blessed with. He has always been of the belief that all will be well. This is a test, and you have to go along with the journey. Whilst that was within the family setup and friends, etc., I also did have work commitments, and again, I was fortunate, very fortunate, that those people for whom I worked were very, very supporting, and would always say, you are a strong person, you can fight this. And in many ways, often this can be said to you, but it is hard to just take that you will be strong and that you will get through. However, the more you hear that, you have to be positive, you have to think that you will be able to make it to the other end, the better the chance is that you will get through. And this is what I found. There was also a time when, I was blessed that, I still have my parents, and they have all been praying, all my siblings have been praying, all my children pray for me, all my friends and relatives, they all pray for me, send me well wishes. And at a time in 2012, when I was initially diagnosed and was going through the treatments, I still recall my mother saying, make your intention to do your pilgrimage because you have a faith, you believe in God, you need to be able to have a reason to fight this. And I looked at her and I thought to myself, dear mother, I am almost at the door of death, and you're telling me that I should make an intention to basically perform a very important part of going to Hajj, when perhaps it will be difficult for me even to think that I will survive that long. But this is where it does sort of reiterate and reconfirm that if you have positive thinking, and if you do have a belief, whatever that is, whatever faith it is, even if it's just the belief in yourself, then many, many hurdles can be overcome. And so I was blessed that in 2013, literally about a year even into my treatments, I was blessed to be able to perform Hajj, which was again with the support of my family, and in particular my son-in-law, who was able to accompany me because obviously I needed accompanying, and we were able to perform a very important pillar of our religion. And for this I'm grateful. For this I will always be thankful that I was able to achieve. And this is where, one starts to ask, this is a test that I had, and this is something that obviously was a very tough journey. But for me, a lot of things came out of this which were of benefit, as I would always be putting off performing the important pillar in Islam of performing Hajj, because I was of the view that until I've settled all my children and my daughters are all married, that is when I would perform this important ceremony and pilgrimage. However, it just shows that there is a higher authority, and the higher authority has plans for you, and is indicating to you that it isn't for you to decide when you will and will not do anything, and that in fact it was very, very essential for me to be able to perform this pilgrimage, and now was the time that I should be doing it. And despite being under treatments, etc., I had the support of my medical professionals who said that, obviously it is something that only time will tell whether or not it has worked, and you will need to take on board that currently the treatments are working, and so you should take the decision if you wished to embark upon this journey. And so yes, that is what I did, and I am blessed for it. And so life then carried on, and as each moment and year passed, completing the journey of the treatments, I did feel that, I was being blessed, that I had got through my test, and that all would be well. And so the irony is now coming again, because just as you get complacent, just as you get confident that your cancer is now in remission and all is well, then, basically nearly 9 years later, I start getting symptoms which required me to obviously get checked. And the symptoms were not the usual. There were no lumps and bumps. There were no, sudden fatigue. There was no sudden loss of weight. It just started as if it was a urinal infection. So nothing that someone would associate that cancer was now back. But in my case, as the test progressed, and a blood test was carried out by my GP, I recall having the blood test in the morning and the GP ringing within hours of that blood test and informing me that again I was to be referred to the breast cancer unit because the markers on my blood test results for cancer were remarkably raised. And in total shock and disbelief, I am then left with coming to terms with the potential that, subject to tests, my cancer had returned and was stage 4 and was terminal.